Hello everyone, I'm here today to give you guys a video about curing depression by removing guilt, because this is a big topic for me. This is something that I actually did not that long ago, and something that will really just transform your life overall when it comes to curing the problem of depression. Because these days, depression is at an all-time high, okay? If you look at the charts, more people are depressed these days than have ever been before. This recent part of the 2000s, we just have this point when we're hitting such a high amount of depression. The number of antidepressants being consumed is also insanely high. We have so many antidepressants going out to relieve this massive amount of depression, being like major depressive disorder, stuff like that. It's just on a tear. And it's a question of why. Why is this happening? Why are so many people depressed all the time? And also at a younger age. It seems to be that depression only started to hit later in years, but now it's seen on college campuses, now it's going back to teenage years. Depression is just outright crazy. And a big reason for this is guilt. Guilt is an emotion that tears so many people to the ground. It is not useful, it is purely destructive. Now, guilt is taught to us at an early age. We're taught that when we do something wrong, when we do something not perfectly, that we should feel bad about it, okay? The problem is that doesn't teach us to do anything better. When we feel bad about stuff, that makes us feel unworthy. When we feel unworthy, we begin to feel depressed about our life, our conditions, what we'll be able to do in the future. Our future is really based out of a lot of our past. If you study the psychological works of people like Freud, all that kind of stuff, you'll look to see the fact that he says all these things really stem from childhood. Childhood has such a huge effect. And these days, a lot of parenting style and a lot of teaching style in schools with the new curriculums and more standardized tests, all that kind of stuff, pushes students to their maximum, pushes kids to their maximum, saying you have to do it perfectly, and you should feel bad when you don't achieve it, when you don't win a ribbon, when you don't, get this placement. If you don't do this right, you won't get into a good college, you won't do this, you won't do that. All that kind of stuff is just everywhere. And so many people really become depressed because they become convinced that their life is going to turn out miserably because they can't do this one thing. And guilt spreads all throughout their life. It just infects everything. It's one of the worst diseases of the mind you can get. Guilt just is this giant plaque that coats the entire brain. What is the reason for this? It's not a literal plaque, a metaphorical plaque here. Because this just happens all the time, everywhere. Because people just feel like they have to be perfect, Now, some of that's perfectionism, but guilt is the first step towards enlightenment. If you can get rid of your guilt, then you can get rid of all these kind of problems, particularly depression. Depression really stems from this lack of well-being, this you convincing yourself, I'm a bad person, I'm not doing well. Now, I won't say that you can cure all of depression instantly and that you shouldn't take medication or that you shouldn't, go to therapy. Definitely do anything that will help, okay? Whatever you can do to relieve depression, use that. But guilt is a huge contributor to it, and it's going to contribute to future generations' depression time and time again. So if you can get rid of your guilt, you can get rid of your depression. At least from my experience. I will not say that will work every time, but I can say that it works in many cases. Now, how do you go about getting rid of your guilt? You can get rid of guilt by first starting to see that it's part of the past. We naturally think guilt is useful, that it does it serves some kind of purpose. But actually, guilt doesn't serve any purpose besides trying to keep us basically in this bondage that that we're not good enough, that we have to have somebody else tell us we're good enough, that we have to serve some higher group of people, always be the sheep kind of idea. Guilt may have once been useful to societies, but it's an artificial construct that no longer is useful at all. It is just put in us, and these days it makes us depressed and it makes us unable to be free, basically. So to be free again, to be free of our depression, to be free of these things that really drag us down, we can get rid of guilt. Getting rid of guilt is not as complicated as you might think. Guilt basically has a glass jaw. He goes down easy. One good punch, and guilt can be gone forever. It's just a thought away, as Dr. Wayne Dyer puts it. So to get rid of guilt, you can simply do it by understanding that it's the past. If you think about anything you feel guilty about, I feel guilty about this thing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, I feel shame about that. Guilt, shame, I say they're interchangeable here. You can get rid of that feeling that is eating you away, saying, I'm unworthy, I did the wrong thing, by accepting it's the past. You can't change the past unless you have a time machine, okay? If you have a time machine, let me know. If you don't, you can't change the past. So accept the past is the past. and that's okay. I can move on from the past, and I can live a better life. Now, certain people with certain levels of depression, persistent depressive disorder, you know, various conditions such as that, major depressive disorder, all that kind of stuff, you should take your medication, anything prescribed, to do that effectively, okay? But this can really help that on the cognitive side of your therapy, working on getting rid of guilt. If you can get rid of guilt, you can massively change your life and massively reduce depression. If you can accept that anything you feel guilty about, anything you feel bad about, is in the past, if you can accept that it's part of the past, then you can build yourself a brighter future. Now think of, my favorite technique goes back to Dr. Wayne Dyer, has this technique of think of the Peloponnesian War. This war that happened over 2,000 years ago between Athens and Sparta. We don't feel bad about that war. We don't feel bad about the Peloponnesian War. So why should we feel bad about anything that has happened in the past? It makes no sense to feel bad about it. Guilt is a waste of thought. It's a waste of everything. So get rid of your guilt, live a better life, get rid of your depression. That's about it for this video, guys. I will see you guys next time with the next video, so stay tuned.